Hello.
Hey, Thomas. Hey, David.
Hey, my headphones should disconnect in the last 2 minutes.
Sounds okay at the moment.
All right, good. Hello, everyone.
Hey, James.
Hey.
Hey, Andrew. Hey, Ben.
All right, just joining in and a little bit interested in trying to contribute a little bit to OpenFeature this year.
Oh, perfect. Welcome.
Hey everyone.
Hey. Hey, Kavindu. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
All right. So Todd did volunteer to be the scribe, but he is on vacation today. So I don't know if we have another person that wants to do it, but I'm sure Todd would appreciate it.
I'm happy to, no problem.
Perfect. All right. I will send the link out again in the chat. Hey, Laura.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Pretty good.
And all right, hey Sky, I'm just gonna throw the doc in the chat real quick. If you don't mind just adding yourself as the participant, and then Ben just volunteered to be the scribe. So thanks for that, Ben. Just give it a minute or two and go ahead and get started. If you have any agenda items, feel free to add it. If you do have to get going, before the end of the meeting, feel free to just add it to the top of the list so you can make sure to that we get to your agenda items. All right, just give it like one more minute and we go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I saw we should. I also reposted the link to the meeting on LinkedIn, and I saw we should have like other 3 people still showing up.
Okay.
I think also someone from Spotify is going to try to make it.
Okay, cool. I know that there's a meeting scheduled with them later. I think Pete and Todd have that on the books for either later this week or next week. Cool. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Like I mentioned, I did put the doc in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and add yourself as the participant, and then if you have any agenda items, feel free. Otherwise, I'll just go ahead and get started. First agenda item, if there's any volunteers for scribe for the next meeting. So that's in 2 weeks. If you're interested, let me know. If not, we can find someone next time. All right, we'll circle back to that in 2 weeks. All right, so the first agenda item, I just want to give a quick update on the current state of client-side feature flags. This is something that we talked pretty heavily about end of last year. There's been a decent amount of activity since then, but the holidays definitely impacted productivity a little bit. But I'll just provide a quick update. First one is I did create a high level roadmap issue for that. There's a link in the docs here. So if you want to take a look at basically what that all encompasses. But basically we've done some research tasks, looked at, how various vendors are, accomplishing client side feature flagging. A lot of them have little subtle differences. So those were all documented as well. And then Pete and Todd have done basically been conducting interviews with different vendors and companies that are using feature flags and just trying to get an understanding of like what the requirements are. A lot of that's been documented in the sub items here. So the spec related changes in research. There's also been a number of open feature enhancement proposals, which is kind of the first stage of spec changes. So you can see I've listed 4 in the docs here. Those ones, the sooner people could review it, the better, just to make sure that we're on the same page. The easiest ones would probably be like the provider disposal functionality. I think those ones are pretty non-controversial and something that we should get in there, relatively quick. The one that Todd added recently is that single context paradigm. And that's really where we're starting kind of to lay the foundation and make the distinction between like what we have in server side, which is kind of like multi-context awareness versus client side or mobile, which is we're kind of looking at as like a single context, which can behave a little bit differently. So please take a look, especially at that OFEP, because that will, like I said, lay the foundation for spec changes, which once these OFEPs are merged, we're going to go ahead and update the spec. So yeah, feedback on that would be very much appreciated. And time is kind of critical here because we're trying to move quickly when it comes to updating the spec, so we can go ahead and get client-side support out there. Yeah, any questions or feedback on any of those items? Cool. I think that it's a pretty exciting area. So I think client-side feature flagging will, yeah, be obviously a huge benefit for people, and certainly easy to demo stuff. So you can show the value of feature flags a lot easier client-side than you can server-side, in a 2-second demo. So definitely looking forward to getting that out there, and it's looking very good so far. And appreciate everyone's help, thus far. Next one, it's very related, but it's basically, I did go ahead and update the project roadmap board. So I basically removed a lot of like the kind of low level issues that we had there, kind of the stale issues, and just try to create higher level like abstraction issues essentially. So if you look at the project board, it has been updated a bit. The ones that are still in the backlog have not been, I guess, groomed yet. So they're basically just like kind of placeholder issues. And so, yeah, take a look at that. If you have any feedback, certainly let me know. The one thing that I hope is not controversial, but I ended up just rolling with it, is like we needed a spot to put kind of org-wide issues. So I chose the .github repo, which kind of has a special meaning in GitHub. So basically, a lot of those like org-related issues have been just thrown in there. And that way we can basically create like sub issues and link them across the different repos. So yeah, if you have any concerns, or if there's a better spot for them, I'm happy to move it, but that's where I decided to put it for now, just because if you don't have an issue created, it actually shows as like pending on that project board in GitHub. So it's a little bit strange. So that's why that was done. And then I did want to just call out, there's a few areas that we have issues for right now, that if anyone has interest or some cycles that they wanted to help out with a project. The first one would be OTel hooks. We have about half of the languages already have a hook defined, but there's a few others that are up for grabs. So if you want to look at that issue, you'll see the ones that have no assignee yet. And if it's something that you're interested in helping out with, certainly let us know, and we'll assign it to you, and you can go ahead and help us out. The OTel one should be pretty straightforward, and there are some examples in different languages. So hopefully that one's not a huge deal. The other one that would be super helpful is getting started docs. Right now we have one for Java and JavaScript, basically, specifically Node, but we'll need one for all the other languages, and we can just follow that same template. So if there's anyone that has any interest, especially in a specific language or something, certainly let me know. There's already issues there, so we just need to assign it and go. Next one is Python. It's getting closer, but if there's anyone that want to basically help volunteer to kind of take ownership to get it across the finish line, this one's up for grabs as well. We are making progress there, like I mentioned, but it's something that, like, if we had one, kind of core maintainer that's able to kind of get it across the finish line, that would be super helpful. I just listed the vendor provider. So if like anyone's using a vendor or is a vendor and wants to, contribute providers, feel free to let us know. There's a project board that links to. So there's, like I think 80 some providers or something listed on there. So lots of opportunities to build, different integrations. And then probably the last one, this will be a pretty big task and probably take us a little bit early this year, but kind of just a website refactor, kind of making it look a little nicer and a little bit easier to navigate, and try to, sell the value in a more straightforward way on the main landing page, and probably consolidate the docs and the main page together would be part of that as well. So feel free to read through that issue and comment if you have any questions. And if that's an area that you're interested in, certainly let us know. Could use the help. Any questions on that? All right. Next one. This is just kind of a heads up. I thought it was a kind of an interesting use case. We wanted to, in the OpenFeature playground, we wanted to have that like downstream microservice have basically feature flag awareness as well. And so that requires evaluation context, and we didn't want to have to update request to the downstream service to include things like, the targeting key and very feature flag specific information. So for this kind of proof of concept, we use the OTel propagator, which basically automatically adds it as a header. It happens automatically as part of like an HTTP request, and actually rips it back out and puts it back on the request on the downstream microservice. So it's kind of an interesting way to potentially pass evaluation context across microservices that wouldn't normally have that type of information. So definitely treat it as a kind of a proof of concept, but I think it's a pretty interesting, technical tool essentially that we could have for these like highly, distributed like microservice architectures that would like to take advantage of, more advanced feature flagging functionality. And the last one for me is I did start experimenting with like managing feature flags, via GitOps. That one, if there's anyone that's interested in that topic, I know I reached out to you, Thomas, and I owe you a response on Slack. If there's anyone that's interested in basically, kind of working through this problem, let me know. I think, a lot of the current GitOps approaches are interesting, but don't necessarily scale or work great with feature flags, just because of the number of feature flags and how they vary across environments and things like that. We've tried to do it in YAML, and it's kind of a nightmare. I've experimented with kind of like a Pulumi style like code generation. So I'm kind of working through a couple different ways of actually doing GitOps feature flags, but that's where I'd kind of like some feedback and to bounce some ideas off some people. So if you're interested, reach out on Slack or, add a comment in these meeting notes, and maybe we could, set up a quick little sync on the topic and kind of discuss it in more details. And that's basically it for me. Looks like David's next. And before I hand it up to him, if anyone has anything to add to the meeting notes, certainly feel free to add something. I think we're a little light on topics today, probably partially because of the holidays. So that's it for me. Go ahead, David.
All right, thanks. Yeah, on my side, it's more of an FYI. We just started with the incubation proposal. It's still a work in progress. Feel free to have a look. I think, Mike, you had started working on the technical side aspect, sorry, but whoever's willing to help with any contribution will, as always, be welcome. I just filled in some of the community related items, so if you have any questions there or any suggestions or think anything's missing, you can feel free to leave a comment. That's pretty much it. The idea is hopefully if we manage to get this before KubeCon and before they actually open the proposals to get community days, we could try to have a community day at KubeCon EU. Otherwise, it will be for KubeCon North America. And that's it.
All right, cool. It looks like Thomas added one. So if you want to.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if we want to have like some tooling for dev experiences in this project, such as like, I don't know, tools that look at a repository and say, hey, this flag is configured in your code, but not available in a provider or something like that. And I don't know if it's something that we already think about for OpenFeature, or if it's something that where we don't want to go yet. I know LaunchData has this kind of stuff where you can run this CI script and can detect if your flag is in your code but not in your solution. And since we have like a more standard way of doing it, we may have something like that that is interesting also in a project.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth maybe exploring it. It may be a little too soon to dedicate a ton of resources to it, but I think it's worth considering for sure. I did notice, I think it was DevCycle had a pretty cool GitHub action that basically would show you like, based on your code and based on your configuration in the tool, it would show like kind of the diff, what's been added, what's not available, things like that. That would be pretty interesting to kind of standardize that if possible, but then you'd also have to figure out how to like interact with the source of truth, whatever that may be, which may be the challenge. But for us, we could pretty easily like probably detect which feature flags are defined in code, but then how to compare that to where that's where that actually like it resides may prove challenging. But yeah, I mean, I think it's worth exploring. I think there could be a lot of possibilities there, and it certainly makes the pull request more interesting if you could have those kind of like auto-generated comments about like how it's how this flag's being used and what the impact would be of adding it or removing it.
I
Yeah.
wonder what the I'm just wondering, like, there's probably a class of features that you could achieve just getting some extra metadata out of the provider, right? Like you could achieve that potentially just by getting a list of flags available within a project or something from a provider, like an exhaustive list that might not be what you get back from the default provider. But then there's queries and questions that are coming up in my head around permissioning and things like that, because then you can go the step further. And I mean, we've built a proof of concept where you can attach an issue, a flag to a GitHub issue, and then it creates a comment that you can toggle the flag. You could potentially drive that through OpenFeature, but you start to get questions around yeah, like sensitive keys, because they're doing potentially volatile writes and things like that.
Yeah, I mean,
But we
think
haven't talked about that at all, right? Like that's kind of interesting. Like it's probably just simple metadata that you could expose, I think.
there is like a proposal that actually beyond the proposal stage now, there was an OFEP that Pete had opened about provider metadata. So that is something that's there's a pull request open for the spec right now. It's not been merged in, but it is open. I think the way I interpreted Thomas's point though is like you'd basically have a tool that would show you like a list of all of the flags that was available in the code, and you could probably do a comparison between some commit hashes and things like that and see which ones were added and removed, and then you could basically use that information to look at like the source of truth, like Flagsmith, for example, to say like, do these flags even exist? Do they return the correct type? Things like that. You could basically like give people the confidence that this is going to work, essentially before merging in the change.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. It's like, because and you're probably right, it's maybe too soon to think about all of this, but I think it's a good next step to improve usage of your flag and being sure that people are tooled up to manage your flag in the long run. So that's why I was asking for that. It is because we didn't have any topic.
Yeah, I mean, one approach could be just to have like, if we had like a kind of a way to detect the flags in a generic like open feature way, and then you'd basically have to kind of do another like provider style thing that would be like the vendor that you're using to verify with the source of truth could be one way to handle that. Yeah, it's worth exploring. If that's something that you're interested in, I think definitely take a look at it and let us know how we can help. But
I do remember a while ago looking at the source code for the launch Darkly tool, and because I was thinking it might be doing some crazy looking at the language and trying to evaluate and build a graph of it was at the time anyway, it was just searching for string literals of flag names that matched. So you could probably get an interesting proof of concept with a relatively small amount of code. But I think what would fall out of that would be quite interesting, because it would just be, like these are the metadata entities that we need to be able to drive this to solve this feature, and they'd probably be fairly straightforward.
yeah, I mean, I think there's two other parts. Like if you could tie it potentially into the GitOps and then that like compiler aware feature flag stuff that I kind of showed off a few weeks ago, like all of those things could work really nicely together potentially, but it depends on the org too. I mean, some people wouldn't want to, have to deal with that level of everything as code, but the teams that do want that could really, I think, benefit a lot from that workflow. So something to think about. Maybe that's how we could tie it in, Thomas, if we talk a little bit more about like the GitOps flows and stuff, and like the compiler awareness and how that could kind of work end to end. I think would be a really interesting flow and very valuable for the teams that want to embrace like, kind of type safety and that confidence across the whole life cycle.
Sure.
All right. Yeah, like I mentioned, a fairly light meeting today. So if anyone else has anything to add, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, we can probably go ahead and wrap up pretty soon. Like I mentioned, if any of these items are of particular interest to you, certainly let us know. Because we could definitely use the help for all of this stuff. Anything else? I guess we did kind of skip the part, the new people introduction. So if anyone feels comfortable and wants to just introduce themselves and say hi, please feel free to do so.
Hey, I'm Laura. I'm visiting from DevCycle, and I actually built our GitHub Actions, so I can help with bringing any of that to the table.
Oh, cool. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, maybe from my end. So I'm Kindu, so working for Dantrace, and yeah, trying to see if I can contribute and yeah, try the topics. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm from GitLab. I work on the feature flags at GitLab, so interested in helping out as best I could here.
Perfect. Thanks. All right. Well, thanks for introducing yourselves. Appreciate it. Nice to meet everyone. And yeah, I guess if there's no other topics, we can go ahead and wrap up. And if you have anything throughout the next few weeks, let us know in Slack. And if you haven't, certainly feel free to join. Pretty lively bunch, I would say, especially comparatively to the rest of the CNCF Slack channels. I think this one has a decent amount of activity. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. Hope you had a nice holiday. Happy New Year. And
Bye, everyone.
later.
Guys.
All right. Goodbye.